All right. So this is going to be a script overview video. In the next videos after this in the series, going to do specifically about certain parts of the script. Like we'll have one video just about the introduction, one about the middle of the script, then one about the close, and then one about like follow up, staying organized. But this video specifically is just going to be a quick, not quick, but an overview of the script. I'm kind of just going to read it off as I would typically read to a client, right? So I'm going to share my screen so I can have the script pulled up here. All right. Let's make this big. There we go. All right. Actually, that's smaller. There we go. All right. So in the very beginning, and again, I'm going to go into more detail with this. I'm going to do like the introduction video and same for the rest of the script. But I'm just going to kind of read this off as I would read to a client just to give like a quick overview of the script, right? So I'm going to read it how I say it to a client. So, hey, Bob. Hey, Bob, this is Joseph. I was just giving you a quick call here from the Veterans Benefits FFL. How are you doing today, sir? All right, perfect. So this call, and then if they say, again, I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm going to hit like the introduction specifically in the next video, but say something like, how are you doing today, sir? Doing good? All right, yes, sir. So this call is just in regards to that request you had submitted for the new final expense and life options for veterans. I'm just the medical underwriter that's been assigned to your file here. I have your date of birth listed as January 1st, 1950. Is that correct? All right, perfect. And then it also says here on my side for the military status that you received an honorable discharge. So thank you so much for your service. We don't take it lightly. Yes, sir. You're welcome. And now, was your main concern, like most veterans, just wanting to make sure that the funeral expenses didn't fall a burden on any of your loved ones? Okay, gotcha. And were you also looking to try and leave a little extra behind as well, or mostly just worried about getting those expenses covered? All right, perfect. That's simple enough. So typically, Mr. Bob, we start with the most important piece, which is who we are looking to protect. And just to pause for a quick second, I want to say the script is a guide, and I have sold plenty of insurance just reading word for word off of this script. It truly is $1 million script. Like this script is amazing that we have. But as you see me throwing in here little things like, or are you trying to leave some extra behind if possible, or just looking to get those expenses covered? And again, when they say how they're doing, I'm like, and they'll typically be like, oh, I'm. Sometimes they'll say like, oh, hanging in there. Be like, yes, sir, me too. Woke up another day. Just like little things like that. You can't remember the script is a guide, not a cage. Obviously, it is fine to go off script, throw in there your little jokes and what your vocabulary that you use, right? Like be yourself, have a real conversation with these people. You can't, I mean, you can just read from the script again and sell plenty of insurance, but you want to have a conversation with these people, right? Like we're in sales, you have to talk to them. These are real human beings, right? And we're trying to talk to them about something that's going to affect their family, affect their life. And, again, at the end of the day, we're protecting their families and we're helping them put their family in a better situation whenever these people pass away. This is a sensitive topic. So you have to build a connection with them, be a real person, and actually communicate with them. I think that goes without saying, but just want to specifically mention that. All right, Mr. Bob. So typically, start with the most important piece, which is who we are looking to protect. So, God forbid, if you were to pass away, who would be the beneficiary that would be responsible for paying for the funeral and picking up all the pieces for you tomorrow, sir? Your daughter, Janice. Okay, I got it. And Janice, that's spelled Janice, correct? Same last name as you, or has she picked up a new last name? All right, got it. Janice Whitaker. All right, got it. And then, not to put you on the spot or anything, but do you know Mrs. Janet, your daughter's date of birth? Also January 1st, 1975. Amazing. All right, got it. And then, if God forbid you did pass away, would Janice be in a financial position to cover a funeral? Or is that kind of why you were looking into this? I understand, Mr. Bob. That's the same reason that most veterans send in this request, just so their loved ones aren't burdened with any expenses. And have you thought about whether you wanted to be buried or cremated one day? Okay, buried. Okay. And do you know what burials typically cost nowadays? say they're like, yeah, like $8 to $10,000. Yep, pretty much, sir. Obviously, with inflation, the costs have gone up over the years. When's the last time you checked into it, or last time you had to, deal with this sort of thing? Oh, 5 years ago. Yeah, so nowadays are typically anywhere from like at the very, very low end, 8 to 10,000. On the high end, it can be as 15 to 20. It just really depends on the overall fanciness of the service, the opening or the closing, the type of casket, and the level of celebration that the family goes with. Yeah. And then besides what I help you with today, sir, do you have any existing life insurance policies already in place, or would this be the first one here? Okay. Understood, sir. No coverage at the moment. We'll make sure we get you taken care of. And again, notice with this part right here, I'm being very, my tone is like caring, it's curious. I'm not sounding like a robot, right? I'm like, and then, God forbid if something did happen to you, would she be in a financial position to cover the funeral? Or is that kind of why you're looking into this? And we'll go over this in the upcoming videos, but again, the script is a guide, not a cage. I typically will ask other questions, right? Like, oh, your daughter, does she have kids? Blah blah blah. Like, try to like build that pain and etc. So, all right, got it. And then this section right here, I don't always read this section. I would say about I only read it probably like 30% of the time. A lot of times I'll just be like, all right, perfect. And then as far as your current situation goes, are you currently working, retired, or disabled? So I'll a lot of times skip this section right here. Um, just because I feel like it can kind of like ruin some conversations because it kind of what this section right here does is it lets them know this is going to be a longer conversation, right? And if I hear them driving, or if I feel like I hear background noise and I feel like they're not in a position to really carry out this full conversation, and I'm thinking like, is this person going to be able to get a checkbook, good or credit or debit card? Like, if they can't finish the sale, then if I have that inclination, then I'm probably going to read this section because I don't want to waste my time going through half a presentation and then be like, oh, you know what? Like, I'm actually driving. Like, can we do this later or something like that? So I'll read this section if I feel like they're not in a position to carry out the full presentation. If I don't feel like they're in that situation, I'm just going to skip typically to this part. And I'll skip this paragraph altogether. So it's kind of a feel thing. Obviously, as you do the job, you'll get a feel for it. So a lot of times I just skip this, but say I'll read it. So what we'll do is we'll spend about a minute or so on yourself and the financial situation. Just make sure everything is comfortable and within the budget. Typically, we don't have any problems because these are all designed for veterans on a fixed income, whether it's Social Security or disability. And then we'll spend a minute on your health. And that's just going to help me navigate which one of the 26 VA approved carriers would most likely give you the approval today. Does that make sense? And it says VA right here, but I don't say VA. Again, never say you're with the VA because we're obviously not. I'll say one of the approved carriers, which will most likely give you the approval today. Does that make sense? All right, perfect. And then as far as your current situation goes, Mr. Bob, are you currently working, retired, or disabled? Retired? Well, shoot, man, I can't wait to say that one day myself. Yes, sir. And then with your retirement, like set pensions, Social Security, anything like that, what would you say that you're typically bringing in per month, just to the ballpark? $3,000 a month? Okay, got it. And then at the end of the month, once you pay the bills and utilities and do any fun things you like to do, what would you say that you're typically left over with? About $500? Okay, I got you, sir. You're doing just fine. And then, so there are two additional discounts that you may qualify for on top of being a veteran. The first being, are you a smoker or a non-smoker? Non-smoker? All right, perfect. So then you obviously qualify for the non-smoking rate. And then for the second discount, they give you a little discount for using a veterans partnered bank. Do you use a normal federal bank or a military branch credit union? Just a normal bank? All right, perfect. I'll see if they're on the discount list here. What's the name of the bank that you typically use? Chase. Okay, perfect. And you opened that in the state of Georgia as well? All right, gotcha, Mr. Bob. I'm gonna look them up here. Yep, of course, Chase, they're one of the biggest banks in the country, so they are on the state discount list as well. And again, you're asking for the name of the bank. So at the end of the conversation, when you're asking for the banking, you're able to, pull up the routing number, right? So, and then a couple of quick health questions for you, sir. For your medical needs, you go to a VA or a civilian doctor? Go to the VA. They're taking good care of you, sir. All right, perfect. And then the last 5 years, have you had any heart attacks, heart failure, strokes, TIA, or stents? And if they say yes, I'm going to ask the other questions. Okay, no heart attacks, no strokes. Awesome, amazing, sir. Have you had any cancer? Yes, no. Okay, what kind? In remission? Blah blah blah. All right. Any diabetes? Yes. You taking metformin or insulin? Metformin. Okay, gotcha. Any neuropathy? No. Okay, very good. Any high blood pressure? Yeah. Are you taking lisinopril, amlodipine, losartan, metoprolol, hydrochlorothiazide? Okay, got it. Hydrochlorothiazide. Okay. Any breathing complications, COPD? All right, God bless. Any anxiety or depression medication? I didn't think so. Any kidney or liver problems, sir? No. Okay. And then in the last year or two, have you had any major hospitalizations where you were rushed to a civilian hospital for any reason? Okay, God bless. And then last health question right now for you, Mr. Bob. Roughly, what's your height and weight? All right, perfect. So just bear with me for 1 minute, sir. I'm going to go ahead and punch all this information into our system and see what the best options available for you are. And then before we go, and I don't like to pause here, I just keep going. If you're brand new, you might have to pause and maybe start quoting them. Obviously, once you have the script memorized, you can start doing the quoting while you're on the phone with them, and you can kind of read the script as you go, and you're reading the script and you're quoting at the same time. You might have to like pause for a second in the very beginning, which is totally fine. And then so now before we go over the packages, I'm just going to explain how the process works. So it's not like going to your local grocery store where you just see it, like it, and buy it. With this sort of thing, we do have to get approved for it. And the carriers will look at what's called the Medical Information Bureau, or the MIB report. And it's a compilation of your medical records, hospitalizations, and prescriptions over the last few years. So it's ultimately not up to me or the veterans to approve you. It is up to the carriers to approve you, which is why I had to ask you those health questions. Does that make sense, sir? All right, perfect. And then do you receive text messages to this phone? Is this a cell phone that you're talking to me on? All right, perfect, sir. So there's just a new protocol in the state. I have to legally send you over a copy of my Department of Insurance license just so that you have it for your records. So in your text messages, you're going to see two different images. The first one is my state of Georgia Department of Insurance license, which has my license number and all of my credentials from the state on there. It even has my address on there. And then after that, you're going to see my Veterans Benefits Office FFL contact card, which just contains my full name, my NPN number, which is like my employee social security number. And then in the corner or on the right side of the contact card, there's a picture of me, just so that you know the face behind the voice and you know the agent that's helping you out today. Did you receive that? All right, perfect, sir. And again, if you don't have that state license yet for the lead you're talking to or the client you're talking to, just send them the contact card. I have all the state licenses, so I send both. If you have the state license, obviously send them a picture of it as well. And typically I'll send the state license, the contact card, really as soon as I know that it's going to be a good conversation. So I'll send it to them like way earlier. So sometimes I'll say like, yeah, a few minutes ago, I sent you over a copy of my credentials or something like that. But again, you can just send it at this point here. Totally fine. All right, perfect, sir. And then I ask them to look at it typically, or I ask them if they received it. But if they're like, oh, I can't check that, I'm not going to be like, well, you got to put me on speaker and check it out. Like just whatever. All right, perfect, sir. And then now I'm going to go over the information about the benefits that come with these plans specifically for our veterans. Do you have a pen and paper handy, Mr. Bob? Yeah. All right, perfect. Go ahead and grab that. Let me know when you're ready. All right. So the first thing I'll have you write down here is going to be immediate coverage. And immediate coverage simply means that as soon as the first premium is made, it is day one coverage. There's no 2-year waiting period or anything like that, like there are with most carriers. Next, you can write down locked in. And locked in simply means that the premium will never increase and the coverage amount for your daughter, Janice, will never decrease. You can also write down tax-free. And tax-free simply means that the death benefit, the living benefit, and the cash value are one of the few things that surprisingly we don't have to pay Uncle Sam for. So there's absolutely zero taxes on these veteran plans for you or for your daughter Janice. Next, you can write down a living benefit. And living benefit simply means that if, God forbid, you get a terminal illness or the doctor says you only have a year or two to live, you're able to access 50% or half of the benefit tax-free while you're still living, just to make that process as easy as possible if, God forbid, something crazy like that does happen. You can also write down cash value. And cash value simply means that your policy will accumulate cash value over time. So down the road, if you ever want to take money out of your policy for whatever reason, you always can at your own discretion. After that, you can write down double accidental payout. And double accidental payout simply means that if your cause of death is any sort of accident, like choking, drowning, slip and fall, or you die in a car accident, God forbid, the coverage would double. So just for an example, say you have a $10,000 policy and you happen to pass away in an accident or an accidental manner, then your daughter Janice would receive 20,000 instead of 10,000. Okay. Does that make sense? Got it. And then lastly, you can write down permanent coverage. And permanent coverage simply means that this coverage will never expire on you. These are whole life policies specifically for veterans, so they don't expire at any age. And with double accidental payout and permanent coverage, again, well, specifically with double accidental, I read that if they're 75 or younger, and I'm always going to quote that rate because I think it's a pretty good benefit and it's not that much more expensive. So it's not really going to make a price wise difference to me. It's like usually like 5 to 10 extra bucks and sometimes less. So I'm going to quote that they're 75 or younger. If they're 76 or older, I typically don't quote that. I know with Americo, you can quote it if they're older than 75, but Corebridge, you can't. Ethos, a lot of carriers, they won't do it if they're, well, Ethos doesn't do it, period. But if they're over 75 with Corebridge or AIG, whatever you want to call it, they don't do double accidental. And just in case I have to do Corebridge or I'm doing Corebridge, I'm not going to read that if they're over 75. So, and then, yeah, perfect coverage, blah, blah. So, all right, sir. And then based on what you've told me here on wanting to make sure that we get that burial cost covered for your daughter, Janice, the system has built 3 packages of coverage. And just to pause real quick, notice how I'm saying the beneficiary's name as much as possible. I'm going over the benefits, right? Like you and Janice never have to pay taxes. Janice will receive double the money, right? Like I'm bringing up the beneficiary's name as much as possible, and you want to do that throughout the entire script. So, based on what you've told me here, Mr. Bob, on wanting to make, and it's important to recap why they're doing this and the beneficiary at this point right here, right? To remind them, you want to bring that up as much as possible. So, based on what you told me here, Mr. Bob, the system has built 3 packages of coverage to make sure that Janice doesn't have to pay for that funeral out of her own pocket. And you can decide on which option will make the most sense. But keep in mind, we can adjust it as you please, because the goal here is to find the right amount of coverage for the best price. But at the end of the day, it does have to be comfortable for you. Does that make sense, sir? All right, perfect. So can you write down for me bronze, silver, and gold, just like the 3 Olympic medals, bronze, silver, and gold? All right, perfect. And I'll start with the bronze option. So the bronze option will cover a basic funeral expense as long as it's not on the fancy end. It won't leave a ton of extra money behind, but it will make sure that the basic funeral expense is covered. And that would be a coverage amount of $10,000 with $20,000 of accidental coverage. And that would be $75 a month with your veterans discount. All right. And then next will be the silver option. The silver option is the one I see most people lean towards, and that would cover the full cost of the burial and factor inflation in the future. So Janice isn't burdened by any expenses whatsoever. That would be a coverage amount of $15,000 with $30,000 of accidental coverage. And that would be $100 a month with your veterans discount. And then lastly would be the gold option. The gold option will, of course, cover any funeral cost and just make sure that you're leaving some extra money behind for Janice and the most amount of extra money behind as well. And the gold option will be $25,000 of coverage with $50,000 of accidental coverage. And that would be $150 a month with your veterans discount. So just to recap here, Mr. Bob, we have the bronze option. That's $10,000 of coverage, 20,000 accidental for $75 a month. Next would be the silver option. That was $15,000 of coverage, $30,000 accidental for 100. And then lastly was the gold. The gold was $25,000 of coverage, 50,000 accidental for 150. Given those three options, the gold, the silver, and the bronze, which one would make the most sense for you? The silver? All right, perfect, sir. Yes, that's the one most veterans go with here. So what we'll do now is we'll send in the request for coverage and hopefully get you approved. Now, if for whatever reason they decline you, we can always try the next lowest option. Just keep in mind, sir, they don't approve everybody, but I'll obviously do my very best to get you the coverage for your daughter, Janice, okay? Okay, so I'm just going to confirm some basic information with you. I'm going to reconfirm some of your medical questions, even though I already know the answers. I'm just required to ask these questions for the carrier record by law. And then we'll be listing Janice as the beneficiary, and we'll choose the effective date. Does that make sense? All right, gotcha. And then I'm assuming this is something you've been thinking about for a while, making sure you had some permanent coverage in place here to protect Janice. Okay, glad I could be of service today, sir. So this first question is kind of silly, but just for legal purposes, sir, I am going to confirm the spelling of your first and last name. So I have that as Robert Jones, Robert, last name Jones, correct? And just to pause real quick here, if on the lead it says like Bob Jones, and like Bob, you obviously can infer that that's Robert. But like Dave could be David, John could really be Jonathan, Joe could be Joseph. So if it's a nickname like that you see on the lead sheet, I'm going to ask them to spell their name. So I don't want to lose credibility. I don't want them to think I don't have their full legal name already, right? I want to come from a position of authority. So if it's a name like, if it says on the lead, like, what's an example? Joseph, like my name, Joseph Connolly, right? Then you can probably infer that their fucking legal name is Joseph Connolly. But if it's like Joe Connolly, I'm going to ask them to spell their name. So how I'll do that, if it's like, if I have their full legal name and I'm for sure that that's their legal name, I'll spell it. But if it's not, if it's like a nickname like Joe, I'll be like, and then kind of silly, Mr. Connolly, but just for legal purposes, I do have to ask you to confirm the spelling of your first and last name. So can you please spell for me your first and last name? And then they'll spell it out. All right, got it. And then got your height and weight as 5'8", 180 pounds. Is that correct? Perfect. Had your date of birth as January 1st, 1950. Correct? All right, perfect, sir. And then upon approval, you'll get a physical policy packet in the mail. What's the best mailing address for you? Once you're a little bit more advanced, you can use True People Search to look up their name and their state. And sometimes you'll have a mailing address. It'll typically have them on there. And a lot of times I'll be like, so sometimes, and again, this is just building more credibility, right? You're giving them information. So if I'm able to find them on True People Search, I'll say, and then I do have a mailing address for you on file, but I'm not sure if it's still correct. Do you live at 111 Main Street? All right, perfect. Or and if they don't, they'll correct me, blah, blah, blah. Or you can just say, upon approval, what's the best mailing address for you? And then, all right. And then is the best phone number for you the number that we're talking on right now that ends in 7891? All right, perfect. And then do you have an email, sir? All right, what is that? All right, got it. And then were you born in Georgia as well? No? Where were you born? Oh, born in Alabama. Okay, I got you, sir. Born in Alabama. And then next question here is kind of silly, but obviously you are a United States citizen, correct? All right, I figured. And then for the medical underwriting, what's your social? All right, perfect. And then I'll read it back to them. All right, so just to confirm, Mr. Bob, I have your social as 555-55-5555. Is that correct? All right, perfect. And then now, and again, I'm going to go into this in more detail on the next few videos, but I'm just, high level overview here. So now they're going to validate your identity and make sure you're not a robot or anything, which I'm pretty sure you're not, sir, because, well, we're on the phone right now. And then just to reconfirm these medical questions, I know I've probably bored you enough already. And then I'm not going to read all these typically. I'll just reconfirm whatever they told me, right? So you take metformin for the diabetes, but it's totally fine to ask these questions. I'll typically ask a few of them. I'll reconfirm their prescriptions, medications, issues, and then I'll ask a few of these questions like any oxygen equipment to help you breathe. All right, amazing. Any COVID-19 in the last 90 days? All right. Any brain tumors or brain aneurysms? All right, very good. I typically do ask this one just because it's like a funny question and it kind of like breaks the ice, you know. And then in the next few years, do you plan on doing any dangerous activities such as bungee jumping, skydiving, or rock climbing? No? Okay. I didn't think so. Those days are behind you, right? All right, perfect, Mr. Bob. And then just to reconfirm your beneficiary, that is your daughter, Janice Whitaker. And I have her date of birth as January 1st, 1975. And she will be receiving 100% of that $15,000 of coverage, correct? All right, perfect. If they're old and like say their wife is their beneficiary and they're both like old, then I'll ask about the contingent. I don't always ask that, but you know, it's totally fine to ask about you want to put a contingent or a backup beneficiary in case, God forbid, you and your wife or blah, blah, blah die at the same time. All right, got it. And then I ask this question, I'd say, again, like 30, 40% of the time. I feel like I'll ask this if I need to build a little bit more of the why. So, and then if you don't ask me, if you don't mind me asking, Mr. Bob, what was it that got you, you know, wanting to get some coverage like this in place for your daughter, Janice? And then again, you're just trying to build the why, right? Oh, you had somebody pass away last couple of years. Was that a financial hardship on their family? Like blah, 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 you know? All right, perfect, sir. And then the last part here is just the state's anti-money laundering verification. And it looks like you do qualify for what's called Social Security billing, which just means it would be drafted in accordance to that date. And again, just to pause real quick, if they're under 65, don't sound like an idiot and ask this question because they're not getting Social Security, right? So, but typically with final expense, they're going to be over 65. I'd say 85% of the time. So you ask it just like this. But if they're under 65, I'll say, all right, perfect. And then it looks like you do qualify for what's called veteran billing, or just, I'll typically say that. It sounds stupid, but I'll typically say something like, all right, and it looks like you do qualify for what's called veteran billing, which just means it would be drafted in accordance to the date that you choose. So whether that's or, you know, for the sake of this example, though, or this walkthrough, I'm just going to use Social Security billing because that's 95 or 90% of the time. So looks like you do qualify for what's called Social Security billing, which just means it'll be drafted in accordance to that date, whether it's the first, the third of the month, or the second, third, or fourth Wednesday of the month. What time of the month is it when you typically receive your benefits? Second Wednesday of the month. All right, perfect, sir. And then is your name Robert Jones, as I spelled it to you earlier, the same as it is with your financial institution, Chase Bank? All right, perfect, sir. A lot of times they'll be like, oh, it's Robert M. Jones for Michael. I'm like, all right, whatever. All right, perfect, sir. So it looks like we are partnered with Chase in the state system. That just means that 9 out of 10 times the routing number that it automates for me on my screen is correct. It should be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Could you grab a checkbook to confirm it for me? Checkbook. All right, perfect, sir. So just to confirm, I had that routing number as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Is that correct? All right, perfect. And then what's your account number? Read the account number. All right, perfect, sir. Just to confirm for that account number, I had 567 1 2 3 4 5 6. Is that correct? All right, perfect, Mr. Robert, Mr. Bob. So, and then again, hopefully you're doing the application on the phone with them, right? And you know, you at this point, you'll probably have to do I always wait till after I get the banking information until I do the application, the text confirmation, all that kind of stuff, the code, the link, whatever you're doing, right? Whatever carrier you're using. But once you get more advanced and you have the script memorized, you can essentially be like typing in the application before you even get to this part. So like typically when I'm doing a presentation, I'm already at the text code, like by the time I get their banking, you know? But in the very beginning, like when you're just learning the script and you don't have everything memorized, totally fine to just like go ahead and pause at this point and then start filling out the application. So you're not like distracted while you're asking the questions, right? Especially the banking, like you want to be focused, you know? But once you're more advanced, you can kind of be doing it while you're on the phone with them. All right. So blah, 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 text codes, fill out the application, get that all done. So once it's done, once it's submitted, or if you're not doing it while you're on the phone with them, you have to buy the license to do it later, then you just kind of skip to this part. So, all right, Mr. Bob. So At this point, everything is fully submitted and approved if it's approved. Don't say that if it's not approved yet. A couple of things to recap. We got you the $15,000 of coverage for, what was it, $100 a month. And you will be getting a physical policy packet in the mail, like I mentioned, sir. Just know that can take up to 10 to 12 business days to arrive, depending on the postal service. So keep an eye out for that packet. Once you get it, keep it in a safe place, somewhere where your daughter Janice would know to look if God forbid something happens to you. Okay. And then the number that we're talking on, if you don't have an eSIM, if you're talking on your personal number, say that. But if not, be like, so the number that I texted you from, sir, where I sent you a copy of my credentials, that 912 number, again, I'll read my number. That is my direct line number. It's the same number that my friends, my mom, my family calls me on. So if you or your daughter Janice ever need anything at all in regards to this coverage, I am the first person to reach out to. I'm just a phone call or a text away. Good news is we were able to get you approved. Bad news is I'm going to be your agent for life, so you're stuck with me forever. Okay, sir? Make a joke, whatever. And then I'm like going to take a second to I'll be like, so you saw that text message that I sent you? You saw my license? Okay. That number, that's my personal number. Like, please save it in your phone. Save it as Joseph.insurance. You'll probably forget my name, sir, which is totally fine. We only talked for 30 minutes here, so I don't expect you to remember my name in a year. However, if you ever need anything, whether you want to add coverage or you ever have any questions, I want you to be able to find my number. So save my contact as like Joseph Connolly Insurance or something like that. That way, if you ever need anything, you're able to find my name and we can always talk in the future. Okay, sir? All right, perfect. I'm just a phone call or a text away. Again, if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I may need to get in contact with you for something in the future. So please do save my contact. So if I ever need to reach out to you, you know who's calling. Okay. All right, perfect, sir. And like if they're untech savvy, like I'm gonna have them write it down, whatever. All right. So, and then lastly, sir, this part is important. We always do contact the Department of Insurance in the state, and we let them know that we completed your request and submitted an application. And the reason we do this is because it should remove you from any kind of list of solicitations about this coverage. So nobody other than myself or the carrier will ever contact you asking any personal information. Okay, sir? But you know how the internet is these days. You may still get some calls. If you do, just know that nothing will be in regards to what we did. So if anybody gives you a call saying that your application is incomplete or due for review, or they're saying, hey, we need the last four of your social to confirm your identity, just know that that's typically a line of crap from some telemarketer. And they're probably not even in this country. Sometimes I'll make that joke if it's, a cool guy, whatever. So just if that does happen, sir, just tell them to kick rocks or give me a call and I can report that phone number to the state. We know this coverage is important for you and your daughter, Janice, and we just don't want to see it get messed up. Okay, sir? Sometimes I'll say, like, I know you wouldn't fall for that kind of shit, but whatever. Like, and again, the reason why I'm doing that is, and then sometimes I'll add in there, if they can't give you when I've like that policy number I texted you, sir, if they can't provide you the policy number, then they obviously don't work for the carrier and they don't work with me because I know your policy number. It's AM08, whatever, right? So, and the reason why we're saying this last paragraph right here is you don't want another insurance person to give them a call and try to steal your policy. And obviously, and also you don't want them to get scammed. It does happen. We've had agents say that like their client got a call and somebody was like asking all their personal information, saying that they worked with the agent. Like there's been people that have called, not specifically my clients. I haven't heard anything personally, but Pierce, for example, just the other day had a client where they called his client and saying like, oh yeah, I'm right here with Pierce. You're right next to me. And some guy was talking background, like, yeah, it's Pierce. Like, so there are scams that happen. Again, these are old people, like just mostly with final expense. So just, read this paragraph. For one, they don't get your business stolen and you don't get a charge back. And then also just like make sure they're aware of what's going on in the world nowadays. So don't want to see you messed with. All right, perfect. And then lastly, sir, are there any other questions or concerns that I may have left unanswered for you? All right, perfect. Well, very glad to hear that, Mr. Bob. This is kind of a cheesy question, but was I of service to you and your family today, sir? All right, perfect. Well, hey, Mr. Bob, I really appreciate you allowing me to serve you. If I'm selling a veteran, and I really appreciate your service to this country. So I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. Continue to stay safe and healthy, and just let me know if there's ever anything you need in the future. But Congratulations on getting approved, sir. Again, we have this coverage in place as of right now for your daughter, Janice, so she is protected. If you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, sir? All right, perfect. Well, I appreciate you allowing me to serve you. Hope you have a blessed rest of your day and continue to stay safe and healthy. Great talking to you. All right, goodbye, Mr. Bob. So that's pretty much it. Obviously, you can go over referrals and whatnot. That's obviously good to do as well. But yeah, that is a quick, or not quick, but that is an overview of the entire script. So I try to read it exactly how I talk to clients, or pretty much. But again, just be confident, read slow. And if you notice one thing, I'm really working, I really try to focus on enunciating my words, right? Like speak with your mouth, speak with your tongue, like enunciate your words. You want to speak loudly, you want to speak slowly, and you want to speak clearly. And I have a list sometimes, right? So it's just like you got to really focus on that. If they can't hear you, they're going to be confused, and a confused mind says no. So speak loudly, speak clearly, have a good tone, sound concerned because you should be, be curious. And then again, don't forget the script is a guide, not a cage. Build rapport with these people, ask about why they need the coverage, build the why, focus on all the little things, have a real conversation with them. Obviously, you can sell plenty of insurance just reading off the script. I've done that the first 3 months I was selling insurance. I just read word for word off this damn script and so made good money. However, the better you get, you want to, build off the script, build the why, have a real conversation with these people. All right. See you in the next one.